Good evening, friends. Imagine standing on a jagged black sand beach, the Pacific Ocean crashing relentlessly against shores scarred by history. The air is thick with salt and sulphur, and the ground beneath your boots feels alive with the echoes of battles long past. This is Iwo Jima, or Iwo To, as it's known today, a remote volcanic island in the Ogasawara chain, about 750 miles southeast of Tokyo. In February 1945, during one of the bloodiest campaigns of World War II, over 70,000 US Marines stormed these shores to seize the island from Japanese forces. The battle lasted 36 days, claiming nearly 7,000 American lives and wounding 20,000 more. On the Japanese side, almost all 21,000 defenders perished, many in underground bunkers or through ritual suicide. Today, Iwo Jima remains a symbol of sacrifice and valor. It's under Japanese control, home to a small self-defense force airbase, but US military personnel still visit for annual commemorations, training exercises, and to pay respects at the memorials. The island is uninhabited except for a rotating garrison, and its landscape is a haunting mix of craters, sulphur vents, and overgrown bunkers, remnants of a war that refuses to fade. Volcanic activity keeps the ground warm, and Mount Suribachi looms like a silent sentinel where that iconic flag was raised. But what if those echoes aren't just metaphorical? What if the dead of Iwo Jima still linger in the shadows of abandoned barracks, their presence felt by those who tread the same ground decades later? Tonight, we're diving into a modern tale from the island, shared by Marines who encountered something inexplicable during a 2018 joint exercise. These aren't campfire ghost stories. They're accounts from hardened warfighters, documented in after-action reports and personal journals. I've cross-referenced them with declassified military logs to ensure accuracy. Names changed for privacy, but the details are as they were told. As we explore this, remember, the line between history and haunting can blur in places like this. Have you ever felt a chill on a warm night, or heard footsteps where no one should be? Stick around as we uncover the ghostly apparitions at Iwo Jima. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Chapter 1. Arrival on the Black Sands. The C-130's ramp dropped with a hydraulic groan, and we stepped onto Iwo To for the first time. March 2018, and the heat hit like opening an oven door, humid, mineral thick, carrying that unmistakable rotten egg bite of active sulphur vents. Black volcanic sand crunched under our boots, finer than most beaches, sticking to everything. Mount Suribachi loomed 3/4 of a mile southwest, its cone still pocked with the same shell craters our grandfathers dodged 73 years earlier. I was Sergeant Michael Torres, platoon sergeant for a reinforced rifle platoon out of 1-1, 28 Marines plus attachments. The mission was straightforward. 5 days of bilateral training with the Japanese Amphibious Rapid Deployment Brigade, mixed with historical site visits and a joint commemoration ceremony on the anniversary week. We would run squad-level live fire, cave-clearing drills in select decontaminated tunnel sections, and force-on-force scenarios using the old Japanese positions as urban training analogues. Standard alliance-building stuff. After the quick in-brief at the JSDF airbase, a modern, compact facility with spotless concrete and razor wire, we were told billeting would be split. Most of the platoon went into climate-controlled transient quarters near the flight line. Overflow 18 of us, including my fire team, got assigned to the Heritage Barracks. That sounded quaint until we saw them. 4 Quonset huts, World War II vintage but refurbished in the 1980s, sitting in a loose semicircle on the north side of the old Central Field runway. The metal skins were repainted OD green, doors reinforced, window screens intact, but the age still showed. Rivets weeping rust, faint dents from long ago shrapnel, our electrical conduit running exposed along the curved ceilings. They sat maybe 200 meters from the active runway, isolated enough that you could forget the small base existed if you didn't look south. Historic ambience, the billeting NCO deadpanned as he handed us keys. Hot water works, lights work, don't break anything. We humped our sea bags inside. The interior smelled of old canvas, metal, and something faintly chemical, like gun oil left in the sun too long. Bunks were double-stacked, 36 total per hut, though only 4 to 6 were occupied in each. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead. Concrete floors had been sealed, but you could still see ghost outlines where field stoves or ammo crates had sat for decades. I claimed a bottom bunk near the centre aisle. Lance Corporal Jamal Jenkins, 19, first overseas rotation, took the rack above me. Corporal Daniel Ramirez, my assistant section leader and the platoon's unofficial historian, grabbed the bunk across the aisle. We stowed gear, ate MREs in the common area, listened to the distant whine of a P-3 Orion doing maritime patrol overhead, then racked out early. First drill was 0430. I woke at 0217. Not gradually. 1 second asleep, next second eyes open, heart rate already climbing. The air inside the hut felt wrong, thicker, warmer than it should have been, even with geothermal heat bleeding up through the floor. Sulphur smell stronger now, almost choking. Then I heard it. Footsteps, not random, deliberate. Heavy combat boots on gravel outside the south wall. Left, right, pause. Left, right, pause. Classic sentry post rhythm. 15 paces, about turn, 15 back. Textbook. I lay still, listening. Jenkins snored softly above me. Ramirez's breathing was even across the aisle. Nobody else stirred. The circuit continued, past our window, around the corner, faded slightly, then returned, closer this time. I sat up slowly, boots already on the floor, grabbed my flashlight, red lens, and eased the door open an inch. Outside, nothing. Empty gravel apron lit by sodium security lights 200 meters away at the fence line. No shadows moving, no silhouette. Wind moved the scrub grass, but that was it. I closed the door, turned. Ramirez was sitting up, elbows on knees, staring at me. "You hear it?" he whispered. "Yeah." Been going for maybe 10 minutes. We waited. The footsteps resumed. Same cadence, same direction. This time they passed directly under our south window. We both tracked the sound with our eyes. Jenkins rolled over. "Sarge, what the fuck is that?" "Patrol," I said automatically. "Probably JSDF roving sentry." Ramirez shook his head. "They use vehicles at night, and their boots sound different. Lighter tread." We listened another 5 minutes. The pacing never varied, never hurried, never stopped. Then, new sound. Faint. Coming not from outside, but from inside the walls, or maybe the vents. A low murmur, multiple voices overlapping. Could have been radio bleed from the ops center, except the cadence was wrong. Short, clipped phrases. Some English, some Japanese. "Fix bayonets. Tekigar. hold the line. Yamero. Static swallowed the rest. I killed the red lens. Darkness pressed in. Jenkins, I said quietly. Phone. Record. He fumbled, hit record. 30 seconds of dead air. Then the footsteps restarted. Louder. As if whoever walked had moved closer to the hut wall. The voices rose just enough to catch fragments. Incoming mortars. Sayonara. Semper Fi. Jenkins killed the recording. His hand shook. That's not a radio, he whispered. Ramirez crossed himself, something he only did when he was truly rattled. I stood. We check perimeter. Now! We slipped out in socks and undershirts, flashlights off, moving low and quiet like we were clearing a hostile building. Gravel bit into our feet. We circled the hut once. Nothing. No prints in the soft ash patches. No cigarette butts. No discarded gear. Just our own tracks. Back inside, the footsteps had stopped. The voices had stopped. The sulphur smell had eased. We sat on our bunks in silence for 20 minutes, waiting for it to restart. It didn't. Eventually, Ramirez spoke. You think we tell the platoon? Not yet, I said. Could be geothermal acoustics, wind through old vents, fatigue. We've been up 36 hours straight. Jenkins looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Sarge, that wasn't wind. I didn't argue, because he was right. We lay back down. Nobody slept. Outside, the first grey light of false dawn began to bleach the sky. Reveille would sound in 90 minutes. Drills would start. Life would go on. But something had changed in that Quonset hut. The island had noticed we were here, and it had decided to speak. To Chapter 2, Shadows in the Bunks. The second full day on Iwo. To start it like any other training evolution. 4:30 Reveille, PT on the Black Sand parade deck, then breakfast MREs, washed down with lukewarm instant coffee that tasted like burnt motor oil. By 0700 we were humping up the lower slopes of Suribachi in full battle rattle. Plate carriers, Kevlar, rifles slung 60 pounds apiece, running squad assaults against mock Japanese positions marked with engineer tape and red pennants. The incline was brutal. Loose ash slid under every step, forcing us to dig toes in like mountain goats. Sweat soaked through uniforms in minutes. The CO wanted us to feel the terrain the way the 5th Marine Division felt it in 45. Mission accomplished. We broke for water at 1100 near the Monument Trail. That's when the first cracks appeared in the platoon's usual bullshit and grin armour. Lance Corporal Jenkins sat on a lava boulder, staring at his canteen like it had personally offended him. "Sarge," he said quietly when I walked over, "you ever feel like something's watching you out here?" I glanced around. Nothing but scrub, steam vents hissing 50 meters downslope, and the endless Pacific horizon. "Island's got eyes, kid. Always has." He didn't laugh. Not like that. Like someone standing right behind me, breathing. I clapped his shoulder. "Heat, stroke talking. Hydrate. We've got cave drills this afternoon." He nodded, but his eyes stayed wide. By 1600, we were back at the Heritage Barracks, gear off, salt-crusted and exhausted. Showers were cold. Geothermal water lines hadn't been flushed properly, but nobody complained. We ate in the common area, chili mac, crackers, and the inevitable MRE folklore session. Ramirez started telling the story of the flag-raising photo, how Ira Hayes never wanted the fame. Guys listened. For once, the jokes stayed quiet. Night fell fast. 19:30, lights out for the early risers. I took first fire watch, midnight to 0200, standard procedure in transient billeting. The hut was dark, except for the red glow of chem lights taped to bunk frames and the faint green readout of my watch. Outside, the sodium lights from the fence line painted long shadows across the gravel. At 2347, the temperature dropped. Not gradually. 1 second, the air was thick and warm. The next, it felt like someone opened a freezer door. My breath fogged. I checked the thermometer on the wall, still read 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Didn't match. Then the shadow moved. In the bunk room proper, 3 racks down from mine, something shifted over Jenkins' position. Not a person sitting on the bunk. More like a darkness denser than the surrounding black, roughly man-shaped. I crouched forward as if inspecting the sea bag at the foot of the rack. No features, just absence of light in a human outline. I froze, flashlight already in hand but lens still capped. Training kicked in. Assess, don't react. I counted seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. At 8, the shadow simply dissolved. Not faded, vanished, like someone flipped a switch. Jenkins didn't stir. His breathing stayed deep and even. I exhaled slowly, heart hammering against my ribs. Fatigue, I whispered to myself. Dehydration. Low light playing tricks. Ramirez's voice came soft from across the aisle. You saw it too. Not a question. Yeah. He sat up. Same thing happened to me last night. Around 0200. Thought it was Ellis fucking around. Then it leaned over my rack like it was checking my tags. We sat in silence for a minute. The cold lingered. At 0042, Jenkins woke screaming. Not a yell. A full-throated primal yell that bounced off the curved metal ceiling and made every other Marine in the hut bolt upright. Get the fuck off me! Get off! I was on my feet in half a second, red lens on, sweeping the bunk. Jenkins thrashed under his poncho liner like he was pinned. Arms flailing, legs kicking, face contorted, pure terror. Ramirez and I grabbed his shoulders, pinned him gently but firm. Jenkins, it's us, it's Toro, you're safe. His eyes snapped open. Wild, pupils blown. It was sitting on my chest, he gasped. Heavy, like a full combat load. Couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and it had eyes, just glowing, staring down at me. The other Marines were awake now, murmuring, grabbing weapons out of habit. Easy, I said, voice low and level. Nightmare. Islands playing with your head. He shook his head violently. No, it spoke, whispered, one word, over and over. We waited. Kairu. Ramirez sucked air through his teeth. Japanese means return, or go home. Jenkins started shaking, not shivering, full-body tremors. It wasn't angry. It was sad, like it was begging. I glanced at Ramirez. He gave the smallest nod. We both knew this wasn't heat or exhaustion anymore. We got Jenkins calmed, wrapped him in a spare poncho liner, made him drink water. Told the platoon to stand down, lights on low. Nobody went back to sleep easy. Around 1:30, the footsteps started again. Same sentry rhythm, circling the hut. This time slower, more deliberate. And every time they passed our south window, the temperature dipped another degree. At 0215, the whispers returned. Not through the vents this time, from inside the walls. Soft, overlapping voices, English fragments mixed with Japanese. Flamethrower team, move up. Yamero, hold the ridge. Semper, Fi. Jenkins recorded again. Playback later showed layered audio, dozens of voices, some shouting orders, some crying, some praying. None of it loud enough to wake the whole hut, just enough to crawl inside your skull. I stepped outside alone at 2300. Gravel cold under my bare feet, flashlight off. Let my eyes adjust. The sodium lights flickered once, brownout from the generators probably. In that half-second darkness, I saw them. Silhouettes, 6 or 7. Stationary, 50 meters out near the old runway edge. Helmets, shoulders squared, rifles at port arms, facing the barracks. Not moving, just watching. I blinked. They were gone when the lights steadied. Back inside, Ramirez met me at the door. "See anything?" I hesitated, then told him. He didn't look surprised. "They're not trying to scare us," he said quietly. "They're standing post, same as we do." I didn't argue. We sat the rest of the watch in silence. Footsteps faded around 0400. Whispers stopped. Temperature crept back up. Reveille sounded at 0430. We moved through morning routine on autopilot. Shaved, dressed, formed up. But every Marine in that hut carried the same look now. Eyes a little too wide, jaws set a little too tight. The island hadn't finished talking, and whatever it wanted to say, it was only getting started. Chapter 3. Whispers from the Vents by Day 3. The platoon had split into 2 camps without anyone saying it out loud. Half treated the weirdness like a running joke. Iwo's got better ghosts than Hollywood, and kept their M4s close during rack time just in case. The other half, me, Ramirez, Jenkins, Ellis, and a few others, had gone quiet. We weren't laughing anymore. We were listening. Morning PT was standard. 4-mile loop around the old airfield perimeter, black ash kicking up in clouds behind us. The route took us past sealed Japanese tunnel mouths, concrete plugs stamped with red hazard warnings. Every time we passed one, the wind seemed to carry a low moan from inside the earth. Nobody commented. Nobody had to. After chow, we got the afternoon brief from the JSDF liaison, Sergeant Major Tanaka. He was a compact man in his late 40s, voice calm and measured. He walked us through a controlled tour of Tunnel Complex B-17, about a quarter mile of the original network that had been cleared, ventilated, and lit with temporary string lights for training. "These passages," he said, gesturing at the narrow black moor, "were dug by hand in 1944. Over 2,000 men lived here. Many never left. We filed in single file, weapons at low ready, NVGs flipped up on our helmets. The air inside was cool and damp, heavy with the smell of wet rock and old gunpowder. Graffiti still visible on the walls, faded kanji, a few crude American cartoons scratched by Marines in 45. Water dripped somewhere ahead, steady like a metronome. Tanaka stopped at a side chamber, maybe 10 by 12 feet. "Here," he said, "a medical station. Many wounded brought. And few survived." He pointed to a rusted metal cot frame, bolted to the floor. "Some say echoes remain. Respect is required." Jenkins swallowed hard. Ramirez crossed himself again. We finished the tour without incident. No apparitions, no footsteps. Just the weight of knowing thousands had died in darkness like this. Back at the Heritage Barracks, the mood shifted. Guys who'd been cracking jokes earlier now spoke in low tones. Ellis found something under his bunk during gear shakeout. A single brass button, Imperial Japanese Navy style, tarnished but intact. He held it up like it might bite him. "Wasn't here yesterday." Ramirez took it, turned it over. "They're leaving calling cards." That night the whispers came early. I was on watch again, 22:30 to midnight. Lights low. Most of the hut asleep. Around 20:31, the first hiss started in the ventilation duct above the centre aisle. Not wind, not loose metal rattling. A deliberate exhalation, like someone leaning close to a grate and speaking softly. Then words. Fragmented at first. Move. Suppress. Left flank. English Marine cadence, and then Japanese overlapping. Teki ga kita, jogeki. Enemy approaching, counter-attack. I sat up slowly. The voices grew clearer, layered, as if multiple men were talking at once in the same duct. Orders, curses, prayers. A young voice, barely out of his teens, whispering, "Mama!" To tell her I tried. Then a deeper one barking, "Fix bayonets! They're coming through the wire." Jenkins woke with a start. "Sarge!" "I hear it." Ramirez was already up, phone in hand, recording. We huddled under the vent, heads close to the grill. The audio captured everything. Overlapping shouts, the metallic clack of bolt actions being worked, distant muffled explosions that vibrated the metal skin of the hut. None of it came from outside. All of it poured from the duct like a broken radio left on in the walls. At a 23:45, the tone changed. A single voice cut through the rest. Calm, almost gentle. Japanese. "Kairu, Kairu yo. Go home, go home." It repeated, over and over. Not angry, not threatening, tired, pleading. Jenkins's hands shook so badly he nearly dropped the phone. "They want us to leave." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe they want us to stay, to remember." The whispers peaked around midnight, then began to fade. Not abruptly, gradually, like a crowd dispersing after taps. By 00:30, the vent was silent again. Only the normal hum of the base generators remained. We played the recording back on low volume, huddled in the common area with a red lens flashlight. Layers upon layers of voices. Names drifted through. Corporal Hayes, PFC Nakamura, Doc Riley. Some matched names we'd seen on the memorial plaques during the Suribachi tour. Others we didn't recognize yet. Ellis, who'd been silent most of the night, finally spoke. I checked my watch when the whispers started. Stopped at 02:47. Exact time the big Japanese counterattack hit on D+3 in 45. Looked it up in the campaign history. Nobody spoke for a long minute. Ramirez broke the quiet. "We need to tell the platoon sergeant, or the CO. This isn't just us anymore." I shook my head. "Not yet. We document. We observe. If we go running to the brass with ghost stories, they'll pull us off island or write us up for stress reactions. We handle it Marine style, gather intel, then decide the course of action." Outside, the footsteps returned, same sentry rhythm, but now joined by others. A full squad's worth. Circling wider, passing under windows, pausing, moving on. Through the south window, in the sodium glow, I caught glimpses again. Translucent outlines in WWII helmets and utilities. Rifles at sling arms. Walking post, like they'd never stood down. One figure stopped directly outside our hut. Turned slowly. Faced us. Raised a hand, not in threat, in salute. Then it was gone. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. Dawn came grey and heavy with mist rolling off the vents. Reveille sounded. We formed up like always. But every man in that Quonset carried the same unspoken question now. If the dead are still standing watch, what are they waiting for us to do? Chapter 4. The Midnight Patrol Day. 4 felt like walking through molasses. The platoon was running on fumes. Short sleep, constant low-grade tension, the kind that makes every shadow look like movement. The CEO noticed the edge in everyone's voice during morning brief. He chalked it up to the heat, the sulfur, the relentless schedule. Ordered extra hydration checks and mandatory rack time after 1900 for anyone not on duty. Good intent didn't help. We drew the short straw for the night's off-base security patrol, a 2-kilometre loop around the old airfield ruins, checking for perimeter breaches, loose livestock, wild goats sometimes wandered in, and anything that might compromise the training site. 4-man team, me, Ramirez, Jenkins, and Private First Class Ellis. NVGs down, weapons at low ready, red lens flashlights clipped but off. Our standard low-light patrol, except nothing about Iwo Jima felt standard anymore. We moved out at 23:30. The moon was a thin crescent, barely enough to silver the edges of things. Black sand absorbed most of the light. We navigated more by memory and the faint glow from the JSDF base fence line 2 clicks south. The route took us past the northern taxiway, wide strips of concrete cracked like old skin, weeds pushing through every fissure. On either side, the husks of wartime hangars loomed, roofs caved in decades ago, walls pocked with shrapnel scars. About 800 metres out, Ramirez's hand came up, fist closed, freeze. We dropped to a knee in the shadow of a collapsed Quonset frame. "Contact," he whispered. 2 o'clock, low ground. I shifted, brought my rifle up, scanned through NVGs. Thermal bloom, multiple signatures, human-shaped. Not moving fast, not moving at all, just standing, scattered across what used to be the dispersal area. "Count?" I asked, voice barely a breath. 8, no, 9, maybe more behind the hangar stub. Jenkins's breathing was shallow, fast. "They're not ours, no IR patches, no gear signatures." Ellis muttered, "Could be JSDF doing their own sweep." "Negative," Ramirez said. "They're in formation. Old school, port arms, helmets high-domed. Look at the silhouettes." I adjusted gain. He was right. The thermal outlines wore M1-style helmets, long M1 Garands or Type 99 rifles slung. Web gear that looked straight out of a 1945 history book. No plate carriers, no nods, no modern loadouts. Then the goggles glitched. Not static. Actual interference. The image broke into horizontal lines for 2 seconds, then cleared. When it did, the figures were clearer, not just heat blobs, faces, bandages on some, blood on uniforms that wasn't there in thermal. One Marine, clearly American, had a cigarette glowing cherry red in his mouth. Impossible. No heat source should show like that. Jenkins hissed, "Sarge, they're looking at us." They were. Every head had turned. Slow, deliberate. Like sentries clocking intruders on their post. I keyed the team net, whisper Mike. "Hold position, do not engage, observe only." We stayed frozen. 30 seconds. A minute. Then one figure detached from the group, walked straight toward us, steady pace, boots silent on the ash. 20 metres, 10, 5. He stopped 3 metres away. Young, early 20s, face gaunt under the helmet rim. Dog tags glinted, impossibly bright in the NVG green. I could read them. Harlan JPFC, 5th Marine Division. Serial number faded but legible. His voice came tinny, like an old field phone with bad connection. "You boys lost?" Nobody moved. I answered, throat dry. "Negative. 1st Marine Division, 2018, Training Detachment." He tilted his head. a small, sad smile. 18? Hell, we're still holding the line here. You come to relieve us? Ramirez spoke before I could stop him. Sir, the war ended in 45. You won, we won. It's over. Harlan laughed, hollow, echoing. Over? Nah. We hold the line. Japs too, truce in death. Nobody leaves till the job's done. He gestured toward the Heritage Barracks, faint sodium glow visible in the distance. Unrest there, unburied, restless. You're sleeping on top of it. Jenkins whispered. Mass grave? Harlan nodded once. Hasty, after the big push. Ground too hot to dig deep. Covered quick, forgotten quicker. They don't like being forgotten. I swallowed. What do they want? Acknowledgement, he said simply. A proper goodbye, or company, one or the other. The other figures began to move, not toward us, but among themselves. Some knelt, bandaging invisible wounds. Others lit ghostly cigarettes. A few sat in a circle, playing cards with translucent decks. No sound, just motion. Silent reenactment of downtime between hellish assaults. Harlan looked back at his men, then at us. Tell your people, respect the ground, speak their names if you find them, finish what we started. He saluted, slow, precise. Then he simply wasn't there. The rest faded with him. One heartbeat solid, the next gone. Thermal signatures flatlined to background heat. We stayed crouched another full minute. Nobody spoke. Finally, Ellis broke the silence. I got it on body cam. We checked. Nothing. Just empty runway, ash drifts, moonlight on cracked concrete, no figures, no Harlan. Clean feed. Back at the barracks by 0145. We debriefed in whispers in the common area, played the audio from my helmet mic. Harlan's voice came through clear. Tinny, but unmistakable. Ramirez stared at the floor. They're not hostile. They're stuck. Jenkins nodded slowly. And they think we're the relief force. I looked toward the south wall, toward Suribachi. Maybe we are, just not the way they expect. Outside, the footsteps returned. Fewer now, not a full squad. More like a fire team, circling protectively, guarding. We racked out at 0300. Sleep came in fragments. But one thing was certain. The island wasn't trying to drive us away. It was asking us to stay a little longer. And to help finish what started in 1945. Chapter 5. Echoes of the Fallen. The fifth day broke with a rare calm. No footsteps at dawn, no whispers leaking from the vents. The air inside the Quonset felt lighter, almost ordinary, like the island had decided to give us a breather. Or maybe it was waiting to see what we would do with what we'd already been shown. After morning drills, force-on-force scenarios using the old pillbox line south of the airfield, we had 4 hours of unstructured time before the evening joint ceremony rehearsal. Most of the platoon crashed in the transient quarters or hit the small gym shack. Our fire team didn't. Ramirez, Jenkins, Ellis and I stayed behind in the common area of Hut 3 with a stack of printouts we'd quietly requested from the JSDF Historical Liaison. Sergeant Major Tanaka had been obliging but guarded when we asked for supplemental reading on post-battle site conditions. He delivered a thin folder of declassified after-action summaries, grave registration reports, and engineering surveys from 1946 to 1952. Nothing classified, nothing sensational. Just dry military paperwork, exactly what ghosts hide behind. We spread the pages across the table. Ramirez, who'd minored in military history before enlisting, took point on translation where the Japanese originals hadn't been fully anglicized. First discovery hit within 10 minutes. A 1946 U.S. Army Graves registration map, hand-annotated, showed temporary burial plots across the northern airfield sector. Most had been exhumed and relocated to the Punch Bowl in Hawaii or the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific by 1948. But one small cluster, marked with a penciled X, was never moved. Reason noted in faded blue ink. Volcanic instability/subsurface heat/risk of secondary collapse. Recommend monitoring. No further action. Ramirez traced the X with his finger. It sat almost exactly under the footprint of our heritage barracks. Unmarked mass grave, he said quietly. Mixed. American and Japanese. Hasty interment after the final pocket was cleared on D+28. Too many bodies. Ground too hot to dig regulation depth. Covered with coral fill and ash. Forgotten when the engineers moved on. Jenkins stared at the map. That's why they're restless. They're literally under our bunks. Ellis flipped to the next page. A partial casualty list cross-referenced with the temporary plot. Names we'd caught in the whispers appeared. P.F.C. Harlan, J. Corporal Hayes, I. Not the famous one. Private Nakamura, H. Lance Corporal Riley, T. Doc. Dozens more, some identified, some listed as unknown Japanese Imperial forces. We sat with that for a long minute. I finally spoke. Harlan said unburied. He didn't mean scattered bones. He meant unacknowledged. No markers. No names read at roll call. No closure. Ramirez nodded. They're not trying to hurt us. They're trying to be seen, heard, remembered. That night, the manifestations changed. No footsteps circling, no cold drafts. Instead, around 21:30, the common area lights dimmed. Not flickered, dimmed, like someone slowly turned a rheostat. We were all awake anyway. Nobody had slept more than a couple hours at a stretch since Harlan appeared. Shadows gathered first in the corners, then coalesced. Not menacing, deliberate. Men in faded utilities and tattered field jackets materialized along the walls, translucent but detailed enough to see rank insignia, unit patches, even cigarette burns on sleeves. They didn't speak at first. They simply existed. One group sat at the empty folding table, miming a card game. Another leaned against the curved wall, cleaning an invisible M1 with slow, practiced motions. A Japanese sergeant, cap tilted, katana still sheathed, stood near the door, arms folded, watching us with calm eyes. Jenkins whispered, "They're hanging out." Ramirez answered softly, "Like they used to, between watches, between assaults." A figure detached from the card players, Harlan again. He walked straight to me, stopped an arm's length away. No salute this time, just eye contact. He pointed once toward the floorboards, then toward Suribachi. Then he mouthed two words we all read clearly on his lips. "Finish it." The room stayed like that for nearly an hour. No aggression, no terror, just presence. A platoon of the dead going about the routines that had once kept them sane amid hell. We didn't move much, didn't speak above whispers. We watched, we bore witness. Around 24:50, the figures began to fade, not vanish, but thin, as if daylight were bleeding into the dark. The last to go was the Japanese sergeant. He bowed once, small, formal, then dissolved. When the lights returned to normal brightness, we found 3 items on the table that hadn't been there before. A rusted 1945 dog tag, name Nakamura, Hiroshi. A faded photo print, creased, edges burned, showing a young Marine with a family back home. A single brass button, Imperial Japanese Army. We photographed everything. I catalogued it, secured the items in my logbox. No one slept. At 0300, and as the first grey light touched the windows, Jenkins spoke for all of us. "We can't leave it like this," I nodded. "We won't." The next morning, we approached the CO, not with ghost stories, but with historical anomaly discovered during routine billeting inspection. We presented the map references, the artifacts, the grave registration notes, framed it as a potential archaeological/historical concern, requested ground-penetrating radar sweep under the heritage huts. The CO listened, looked at the photos, looked at our faces, hollow-eyed, unshaven, but steady. He made one call to hire. By 1400, a small Japanese-American joint repatriation team was en route from Tokyo. Non-invasive survey scheduled for the following dawn. We spent the rest of the day in quiet preparation. The barracks stayed silent that afternoon, but we knew the dead were listening, and for the first time since we'd landed, it felt like they were finally being heard. Chapter 6. Summit of Spirits. The 6th day arrived with a sky the colour of old steel, low clouds scudding fast, carrying the promise of rain that never quite fell. We formed up at 0530 for the climb. Full platoon plus JSDF counterparts, light load only, rifles slung, hydration bladders, no body armour. The mission was ceremonial. The real weight we carried was invisible. The trail up Suribachi is narrow, steep, and unforgiving. Loose scree shifts under every boot. Sulphur vents hiss from cracks in the rock like suppressed breathing. Halfway up, the wind carried fragments of voices again, not the barracks whispers, but something older. Distant cheers, shouts of "Corps!" fading into the gusts. Nobody mentioned it. We just kept moving, heads down, one foot in front of the other. At the summit crater rim, the view hits like a physical force. The entire island laid out below. Black beaches scarred by old shell holes. The runway like a pale scar across the north. The Pacific stretching endless and indifferent. The memorials stand clustered near the edge. The Marine Corps statue, the Japanese peace obelisk. Plaques listing the fallen by unit and date. We formed two facing ranks, US on one side, JSDF on the other. The joint chaplain stepped forward. Brief remarks on shared sacrifice, alliance forged in fire, peace earned a terrible cost. Then the moment every Marine on that hill had come for. Colours presented. The American flag rose first, slow and deliberate, halyard singing in the wind. Then the rising sun beside it. No salutes yet, just hands over hearts. The wind caught the flags hard. They snapped like rifle reports. That's when the temperature shifted. Not cold like the barracks nights. Warm, almost comforting, like standing near a hearth after long exposure. And with the warmth came presence. They appeared along the crater rim, dozens, maybe more. Translucent ranks standing at parade rest behind our living formation, Marines in herringbone utilities and M1 helmets, Japanese soldiers in mustard tunics and field caps. No weapons raised, no aggression, just attending. Some bandaged, some smoke drifting from ghostly cigarettes. A few leaned on invisible rifles like crutches. They faced the same direction we did, out over the island they had bled for. I glanced left. Jenkins saw them too, eyes wide but steady now, no panic. Ramirez's jaw was set, but his shoulders had relaxed for the first time in days. Even Ellis, usually the skeptic, stared without blinking. The chaplain concluded, "In memory of all who gave their last full measure here, American and Japanese, we honour you. May peace be your rest." A soft chorus rose, not from our throats, but from the rim, faint, overlapping. Semper Fi, Arigato, Sayonara. The words blended into wind, then faded. The flags reached full height. We rendered honours. Right hand salute, crisp. The dead saluted back. Slow, precise, palms flat. Then, one by one, they began to dissolve into the rising sun, outlines thinning, until only motes of ash danced where they had stood. We descended in silence. No one spoke of what we'd seen. We didn't need to. And back at the Heritage Barracks, the final night felt different. Not tense, not haunted, expectant. We gathered in the common area after evening chow, voluntary, no orders given. Lights low, a few chem lights taped to walls for ambiance. Someone had scrounged instant coffee. The smell cut through the sulphur stink for once. Around 21:30, the manifestations returned. This time they filled the hut. Not crowding, not threatening. Full platoons, Americans and Japanese side by side. They moved through old routines. One group mimed cleaning weapons with invisible rags and rods. Another wrote letters on ghostly paper, lips moving in silent dictation. A medic knelt beside an unseen wounded man, applying pressure. A Japanese lieutenant paced slowly, inspecting his men with quiet nods. Harlan appeared again, centre aisle this time. He carried something translucent in his hands. A folded flag, small, tattered, the kind carried in a tunic pocket for luck. He stopped in front of me, held it out. I reached. My fingers passed through it first. Cold mist. Then contact. Solid. Warm. The flag settled into my palm, real cotton, frayed edges, faint bloodstain on one corner. Harlan's voice, soft. "Finish it." He stepped back. The others gathered closer, not encircling, but witnessing. Ramirez spoke first, voice steady. "We found the grave records. Survey team comes at dawn. They'll map it, mark it. If remains can be recovered with respect, they will be. If not, we'll make sure names are read. Plaques added. Services held. You won't be forgotten again." A ripple passed through the figures. Not sound, feeling, relief. Like a long-held breath finally released. One by one, they began to fade. Not vanish. Dissolve gently. Smiles on some faces. Nods of acknowledgement. The Japanese sergeant bowed once more, deeper this time. Harlan saluted last, then turned and walked through the south wall toward Suribachi. By 2300, the hut was empty again. Truly empty. No residual cold, no whispers. Just the normal hum of the bass and the distant crash of surf. We stayed up till reveilles, talking quietly, sharing what we'd seen, what it meant. No fear left, only respect, and a strange gratitude. The next morning, the survey team arrived. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed. Anomalies consistent with human remains beneath the barracks slab. Non-invasive probes. Careful documentation. Repatriation protocols activated for both nations. As we boarded the C-130 that afternoon, I looked back from the ramp. I know misty figures on the runway this time. No salutes from the shadows. Just black sand, steam vents, and Suribachi standing watch. Quiet now. Peaceful. We lifted off. The island shrank below us, and for the first time since we landed, it felt like the dead could finally rest. Chapter 7. Departure with Shadows. Evac day came faster than any of us expected. The survey team worked through the morning under strict protocols: ground-penetrating radar grids, non-invasive core samples, photographic documentation. No digging, no disturbance, just confirmation. The anomalies beneath the heritage barracks were consistent with human remains, multiple individuals, shallow burial depth, mixed nationalities. The Japanese liaison officer stood beside the American Graves registration rep, both nodding solemnly as the data scrolled across laptop screens. By 1100 they had enough to recommend formal repatriation proceedings. Plaques would be added. Names, where identifiable, would be read at future ceremonies. The ground would be marked, respected, remembered. We packed in silence. Sea bags zipped, weapons cleared and cased, gear inventoried twice. No one joked about ghosts anymore. The barracks felt different now, empty in a clean way, like a room after a long, necessary conversation has ended. I walked the perimeter one last time at 12:30. Gravel crunched under my boots. Sulphur vents hissed softly, almost companionably. No footsteps followed. No cold draughts brushed my neck. I stopped at the south wall of Hut 3, where the sentry rhythm had circled night after night. Placed my hand against the warm metal skin. Nothing. Just sun-heated steel and faint rust. "Fair winds," I said quietly, not sure who I was speaking to. Maybe all of them. Back at the flight line, the platoon formed up for manifest check. The CO walked the ranks, eye contact steady. "Outstanding work this week. You represented the Corps with honor. Remember what this place means. Carry it forward." He didn't mention the barracks. Didn't need to. We all carried the same unspoken debrief in our eyes. As the C-130's ramp lowered, Jenkins paused at the top step, turned, looked back toward the heritage huts, then farther to Suribachi, standing silent against the sky. He raised his right hand in a slow salute. Not regulation, personal. A few others joined. Ramirez, Ellis, me. We held it until the loadmaster called us in. Inside, we strapped down. Engines spooled up. The bird taxied, accelerated, lifted off with that familiar heavy lurch. Through the small circular window, I watched Iwo II shrink. Black beaches, steaming vents, the runway scar fading into green-grey haze. No misty figures lined the strip this time. No salutes from the runway edge. Just the island, alone again, under its own watch. Jenkins leaned over from the red webbing seat across the aisle. "You think they're gone?" I thought about it. Not gone. Settled. They had their say. We listened. That's enough for now. Ramirez, 2 seats down, added quietly, "They'll still be there. Standing post, but maybe quieter." We flew in relative silence the rest of the way. Some slept, some stared at nothing, some scrolled photos on phones. The artifacts we'd secured, the survey team at work, the summit ceremony with its rim of translucent witnesses. No one spoke of showing the command. Some things stay in the platoon. Stateside debrief was routine. Medical checks, gear turn-in. After-action reports sanitized to environmental anomalies noted during billeting. Historical site concerns elevated to Joint Repatriation Authority. No mention of apparitions, voices, or a PFC named Harlan who hadn't walked that runway since 1945. The official record stayed clean. Our memories didn't. Weeks later, back at Pendleton, normal life crept in. Liberty runs, family time, the next training cycle. But pieces lingered. I woke once at 02:47, exact time Ellis's watch had frozen that third night. Heart rate elevated, certain I'd heard boots on gravel outside my apartment window. Nothing there, When I checked, just streetlight and distant traffic. Still, I sat on the edge of the bed for 20 minutes, listening to the quiet. Jenkins told me later he kept the brass Imperial Navy button in his wallet. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Every time I reach for cash, I feel it. Keeps me straight. Ramirez started a quiet tradition in the platoon, before major field ops, a small circle after dark. Names read from the Iwo casualty lists we'd copied. Short. Simple. PFC Harlan, J. present. Private Nakamura, H. present. No ceremony beyond that. Just acknowledgement. The dog tag we'd been given, the one with Harlan's name, went into a shadow box in the company day room. Unofficial. Unexplained. When new Marines ask about it, we tell them the short version. Found during a training rotation on Iwo. Belonged to a Marine who never left. We brought a piece of him home. They nod. Some believe it's just a story. Some feel the weight behind the words. And I keep the small folded flag Harlan handed me in my deployment footlocker. Cotton still carries a faint trace of sulphur and cordite. On bad nights, when the news is heavy with casualties or the world feels too loud, I take it out, unfold it carefully, run my thumb over the blood-stained corner, and I remember. The island didn't curse us. It didn't haunt us in the Hollywood sense. It asked us to see, to listen, to carry forward what too many forget. War doesn't end when the shooting stops. The fallen don't always rest easy until someone remembers their names. We did, and somewhere on a black sand island, 750 miles from anywhere, the footsteps have gone quiet. The whispers have become thanks. The sentries stand post, still vigilant, still present, but no longer alone. Semper Fi.